News that had been kind of expected, but finally confirmed today by head coach Mike Norvell as it pertains to injuries in Florida State's 2024 fall season. You can see it at the bottom of the screen here on Warchant TV. Wide receiver Destyn Hill has been ruled out for the season with an injury he sustained in spring. Joining me to talk about that and a couple other updates from Mike Norvell is Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. Ira, again, based upon perhaps practice attendance, this isn't something that completely shocks you about Destyn Hill, is it?
No, when Destyn got hurt early in spring practice, we had heard that it was an ACL and that he was going to be out for the year. But Mike Norvell does not. I mean, that kind of the condition to us to attending practice and all the media is we really can't report injuries until he goes on the record and confirms them, especially if it's something that we are aware of because we're at practice. That's kind of the give and take. Is he allows us to be at practice, but we can't use that information and break injury news that he doesn't want out there yet. For whatever reason, Mike Norvell didn't want to confirm the Destyn Hill news during the spring. All he would say at the time was, he's going to be out for the rest of the spring, but he wouldn't say, and I think what he said was it would be evaluated later. But yeah, tonight, speaking down at West Palm Beach before a booster club event, Norvell confirmed it and said that, Destyn Hill is going to miss the season. So it's breaking news from a, media standpoint in terms of what we can report and the fact that, the public now can hear about it officially, but I think everybody's kind of expected it. We've had so many questions on the shows we did, several headlines yesterday. Somebody brought it up that we know you can't comment on his torn ACL, but blank, blank, blank. And so it's not a big shock to the team. Obviously, they've known about it. Destyn Hill's known about it. The coaches have known about it. But yeah, it's finally confirmed out there publicly.
I would think, Ira, that has to be part of the math as Florida State was, at least we, outside of the program at Florida State, we were expecting more names to be entered into the portal, specifically from the wide receiver position. And outside of Andrevius Jacobs, that just didn't happen. So maybe that's some of the math that was done behind the scenes here for a Darion Williamson or a Kentron Poitier or a Deuce Spann, because those are players, Ira, that are going to have to step up with Destyn Hill not being a part of this rotation in the fall. Obviously, we know that, Malik Benson, who we're going to get to in a little bit, has ascended to the number one position at wide receiver for Florida State. But if you're filling out your 2 and your 3 on the outside, not named Ja'Kai Douglas, who's lined up in the slot, there's going to be a lot of competition there. And I think many of those guys might have stuck around because they saw an opportunity. Don't wish for it in this way, but they see an opportunity for more snaps in the fall.
Yeah, and I also think that that's kind of part of why we were kind of looking for more from the receiver position in the spring, and people can, read the things we've written or heard the things we've talked about in the various shows and podcasts that we felt like we kind of wanted to see more from the receiver position because they did have, some opportunities for guys to step up. Not only did you lose Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson from last year's team, but you also lost, Destyn Hill got injured early in the spring, and that, like I said, the team knew he was going to be out. And so you're really hoping some of those guys step up. And obviously Malik Benson, who transferred in from Alabama, I think was clearly the number one receiver all spring. And we're going to talk about him a little bit here too. But, you really wanted to see maybe some other guys emerge because this was going to be a really big year for Destyn Hill. Destyn Hill, for people that don't remember, I'm sure most people that are watching this do, he missed 2 years coming out of high school before he got to Florida State. And then he came in last year and showed some real potential, but then got injured during last season. And that kind of slowed him up a little bit, but you saw the potential. He's got, great speed, really good ball skills, and is a good route runner and was having a really good spring until he got hurt. So it felt like there's a good chance he was going to be one of your top 2 or 3 receivers. Then he gets hurt. And so you kind of want to see some of these other guys step up. So yeah, man, it's nothing but opportunities. And, again, it wouldn't shock us if Florida State did. If a receiver showed up in the portal or if a receiver is in the portal that they could make a run at, it doesn't seem like that's been evident so far, but we'll have to see how it plays out the rest of the summer. But yeah, definitely plenty of opportunities, and they've got a lot of options. They've got guys, as you mentioned, some guys like Poitier and Darion Williams who have been in the system for a long time. You also have some of these younger guys like Hakeem Williams and some of these other young receivers that have potential as well. I think the other thing you may see, and Destyn Hill played a lot in the slot, and I think you may see more Lawrence Toafili in the slot. You may see more Jalen Lucas in the slot. Those running backs who have the ability to go catch passes will probably help out there as well.
So it could have been an even worse bit of news for Florida State because Mike Norvell brought up Malik Benson, wide receiver, as you said, who's emerged as number one. The chemistry with DJU in spring was evident. And also TJ Ferguson, 2 Alabama transfers, 2 guys that got rolled up on in the spring game. And I remember doing the post-game show and saying, you got to be kidding me. These 2 guys really freak, football roll-up injuries. But Mike Norvell says good news on both of those fronts. And this is something that we've hinted at on Warchant.com and on Warchant TV for a while, that the initial reports coming out of the spring showcase were A-OK for these guys. Yeah. They're going to be good to go for fall camp.
Yeah, and both were, just scary just because, again, you talk about guys who you brought in as transfers, older football players that you think should be able to play right away. As we said, Malik Benson's probably the number 1 receiver on this team. So when he went down, that was really scary. And as you said, we talked about it that week, that all indications were that he was going to be fine. And, from what I heard, he really got lucky. And Florida State really got lucky. Like, if the injury had been just slightly different, if like the contact had been maybe a fraction of an inch off, he might have been in real trouble from what we had heard at the time. And but fortunately he wasn't. And he should be ready for the fall. And as you said, TJ Ferguson we don't know what his role is going to be on this team yet. I don't know that he's going to be a starter on the offensive line. I think he'll definitely be in that top 8-9 rotation. So there's chances he may start this season. And he's a big, strong, physical kid. And he's got a little nastiness to him, which we saw a little bit in the spring as well. So I think that's good. But he's in that, really deep guard rotation, and it's good to hear that he'll be available as well. And again, with all those guys, the big, obviously we focus on the team perspective. You also hate it for any young player to get injured. And, I think it's great news for those guys. You feel terrible for Destyn Hill, especially what he's already gone through. But I will say this, just for people, again, just, you have the benefit of the fact that we were at practice. Destyn Hill came to practices after his injury. We saw him. He was there at the spring showcase as well on crutches. Again, we kind of knew this was coming. And he seemed fine. I mean, he in terms of his emotions, like I think he's worked through it. And you could imagine, man. I mean, imagine if you had to sit out as much as he did from high school to college, come back, deal with a small injury during your freshman year, and then come back to spring, have a good spring, and then have this happen. It would probably knock most of us for a loop, but it seemed like he was in good spirits, at least outwardly, during the spring. And maybe he's got another big comeback in store.
Yeah, on the one hand, you're getting so much closer to your goal, and last year he would have had some opportunities as well if he didn't get banged up, and you're saying, what's it going to take? On the other hand, if you look at it and say, well, I've been through worse, that's true. Destyn Hill has been through worse, and he's been through a longer delay. It's just unfortunate for Florida State. Ira, last thing, I'll give you first dibs. In terms of the receiver room, give me a name of somebody that you are putting the clarion call out to step up and fill the void for Destyn Hill. Who's a guy you're looking at, thinking about over summer workouts and into fall camp?
I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown. Again, this is, Corey and Jeff and I talked about this a lot on headlines, and you and I talked about it some on the Smash. I'm not giving up on the older guys, but it's kind of like it's hard for me to expect something great to change if somebody that's been in the program for 3 or 4 years already. Now, hopefully it works out. Hopefully they prove me wrong. But I'd really like to see Jaylen Brown. I think he's a talented kid, really fast, really smooth route runner. Had some great moments in the spring, he caught some 60, 70-yard passes from DJ Uyunglele. He's a guy that's hard to overthrow because he is so fast in the open field. Again, he'd only been on campus for a couple months. He's really tight with Malik Benson, so I have to assume that they're going to spend a lot of time together. From what we saw in the spring, they were always kind of tied at the hip. Maybe he'll be good to be with him throughout the summer. And he redshirted last year at LSU, so he's been in college for a couple of years. So Jaylen Brown's a guy that I'd love to see emerge, not just because, I'm down on those other guys, but I just think he's an exceptional talent. And if he comes through and becomes a guy in his second year of college, I think that would be huge for Florida State this year and going forward.
If it's one of the older guys that emerges, you have your own offensive version of LaMarcus Brutus, who in the final moments of their career, they emerge and you say, it was there all along. We knew it. For me, though, the guy I'm circling is Hakeem Williams. I think he's going to make it on the field an awful lot anyway because of his attention to detail and blocking. Right. And given the speed they have on the perimeter, the speed they have in the backfield, I think bubbles and blocking and assignments like that are going to be very important in the offense. So it's not like Hakeem is not going to get the snaps. Yeah. But the production's got to follow. And that's something that everybody's going to be looking forward to in camp to find out. So more information from Mike Norvell's talks as he goes around the country and speaks to Florida State boosters and perhaps financially interested people across the Seminole footprint, we'll have for you on warchant.com. We'll have it for you on Warchant TV, as well as more updates out of the portal, recruiting classes, and more. If you haven't hit the like button yet or subscribed, do yourself a favor. If you're a Florida State fan, do both of those things. Head over to warchant.com for more information. He's Ira Schoffel, managing editor. My name is Tom Lang, and we will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV.